The late-night air was heavy with the kind of stillness that makes every sound reverberate, and the home was quiet. The little sound of the door opening tonight was just enough to wake Nathan, who had always been a light sleeper. That evening, Mia, the sister of his flatmate, had unexpectedly arrived. Her enthusiasm filled the entire apartment. Mia was attractive. She was tall, had beautiful green eyes, and exuded a confidence that made her hard to ignore. Despite Nathan's best efforts to maintain his distance and remind himself that she was off limits, it was evident from the way she stared at him across the table during dinner and the way her laughing filled the room that she wasn't sharing his thoughts. The faint patter of her bare feet became louder as the door opened farther. She noticed the rustle of the sheets as Nathan stirred a little. She looked over at him and paused in the doorway, biting her lip. His t-shirt was rising up just enough to reveal the toned contours of his abdomen as he lay spread out on the bed. Something about Nathan made her disregard caution, even though she knew what she was doing and thinking was wrong. Her heart pounding, she walked over to his bed and gently closed the door behind her. Her voice was barely above a breath as she muttered, "Nathan?" His chest rose and fell steadily in the faint moonlight, but he made no answer. Her fingers hesitated just above his arm as she knelt next to the bed. She marveled at how his muscles stiffened beneath her fingertips as she ran a feather-light touch over his skin. Nathan's eyelids fluttered open as he awoke. He said, his voice hoarse from sleep, "Mia?" She leaned closer and whispered, "Shh," her breath making him shudder as her lips were so close to his ear. "Just me." He blinked, allowing bewilderment to take hold as the sleep-induced fog lifted slightly. "Why are you in this place?" A gentle, bold smile curved Mia's lips. "I thought maybe you couldn't sleep too, because I couldn't." Nathan pulled himself up a little, exposing more of his chest as the covers slid down. "This isn't a good idea," he said in a shaky voice. She trailed her fingertips lightly over his shoulder and said, "Maybe." However, it doesn't feel incorrect. He was caught off guard by her audacity and paused when she leaned closer and delicately kissed him. At first, the kiss was tentative, just a faint touch, but Mia became more confident when Nathan didn't back down. Her hands went to cup his face as she tipped her head, intensifying the kiss. Nathan groaned softly, his hands moving to her waist as if he couldn't stop himself. "Mia," he murmured against her lips, his voice a mixture of protest and need. "Don't think," she whispered, her lips trailing along his jawline, her touch igniting every nerve in his body. "Just feel." Her words broke the last of his resistance, and Nathan pulled her closer, his lips finding hers again in a kiss that was hungry, desperate, and all-consuming. Nathan's hands slid up Mia's back, his fingers tangling in her hair as their kiss deepened. The room seemed to close in around them, the air thick with tension and desire. Mia moved closer, her body pressing against his, and Nathan could feel her heartbeat racing against his chest. "This is insane," he whispered, his voice breaking as her lips trailed along his neck. "Maybe," she murmured, her breath warm against his skin, "but it feels so right." Her words sent a shiver down his spine, and he couldn't hold back any longer. He flipped her onto the bed, pinning her beneath him as his lips captured hers again. The way she gasped softly, her fingers clutching at his shoulders, drove him wild. "Mia," he said, his voice low and raw, "you don't know what you're doing to me." She smiled up at him, her eyes dark with mischief and something deeper. "Oh, I think I do." Her hand slid down his back, her touch both teasing and possessive. Nathan groaned, his body responding to her in ways he couldn't control. Every kiss, every touch, felt like it was pulling him deeper into something he couldn't escape and didn't want to. Mia's fingers found the hem of his t-shirt, and she tugged it upward, exposing more of his toned torso. Nathan hesitated for a brief moment, but the way she looked at him, like she had been waiting for this moment forever, erased any doubts. He let her pull the shirt over his head, and the way her hands explored his bare skin sent a wave of heat through him. "You're incredible," she whispered, her hands tracing the lines of his chest and shoulders. Nathan leaned down, his lips finding hers again as his hands began to wander. The feel of her curves beneath his touch was intoxicating, and he couldn't stop himself from exploring further. "Mia?" he murmured against her lips, his voice a mixture of desperation and need. She responded by pulling him closer, her body arching against his as she whispered, "Don't stop." As their kisses grew more intense, the boundaries between them blurred, and Nathan couldn't remember why he had hesitated in the first place. Mia's touch, her taste, the way she moved beneath him. It was all too much, and yet not enough. He wanted more, needed more. Her hands slid down his sides, her fingers dipping below the waistband of his sweatpants, and Nathan's breath hitched. "Mia," he said, his voice strained, "are you sure about this?" Her response was a soft, lingering kiss that left him breathless. "I've never been more sure about anything," she whispered, her eyes locking with his. Nathan groaned, giving in completely as he kissed her again, his hands sliding beneath her shirt. The feel of her bare skin against his fingertips was electric, and Mia's soft moans only fueled his desire. She tugged at his pants, and he helped her push them down, their movements becoming more frantic as the heat between them intensified. Every kiss, every touch, felt like it was setting him on fire, and Nathan couldn't get enough of her. "Mia," he breathed, his lips trailing down her neck as his hands explored every inch of her body. She gasped softly, her nails digging into his back as she whispered his name. The sound of it, his name on her lips filled with longing, sent him over the edge. Time seemed to stand still as they lost themselves in each other, the rest of the world fading away until there was nothing left but the two of them. It was reckless, forbidden, and absolutely undeniable. In the aftermath, as they lay tangled together in the sheets, Nathan's mind raced with a mix of emotions. He glanced down at Mia, who was resting her head against his chest, her fingers tracing lazy patterns on his skin. This changes everything," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Mia tilted her head to look up at him, a soft smile playing on her lips. "Maybe that's not such a bad thing." Nathan's heart pounded as he looked into her eyes, seeing the same mix of excitement and uncertainty that he felt. He knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but in that moment, with Mia in his arms, he couldn't bring himself to regret a single thing. Nathan gently traced his fingers along Mia's arm, his touch light and tender. The quiet between them was filled with an unspoken understanding, though the weight of what had just happened loomed large. He turned his head to look at her, the way her chest rose and fell in a calming rhythm, her lips still slightly swollen from their kisses. "I didn't plan for this, Mia," he said, his voice low and filled with raw honesty. She propped herself up on one elbow, her hair tumbling over her shoulders in a way that made her look effortlessly stunning. "Neither did I," she admitted, her tone matching his seriousness. "But I don't regret it." Her words sent a jolt through him. He wanted to believe her, but a part of him wrestled with the complications they both knew would come. "This wasn't just a moment, was it?" Mia shook her head, her eyes holding his. "No, it wasn't. And I think we've both known that for a while now." Nathan swallowed hard, feeling the gravity of her words. They had been dancing around this for weeks, months even, but crossing the line had changed everything. There was no going back now. As the sun began to rise, its soft light spilling into the room, Nathan sat up and ran a hand through his hair. The events of the night replayed in his mind, each memory more vivid than the last. Mia stirred beside him, reaching out to place a hand on his back. "You're thinking too much," she said softly, a teasing edge to her voice. He chuckled, though the sound lacked humor. "How could I not? It's a lot to process." Mia moved closer, wrapping her arms around him from behind. "Nathan, I don't know where this will lead, but I know I don't want to pretend it didn't happen." Her words struck a chord in him, and he turned to face her, his hands framing her face. "I don't want to either, Mia, but this is going to complicate everything." She leaned into his touch, her eyes searching his. "Maybe, but isn't it worth it? Doesn't this feel like something we shouldn't ignore?" Nathan's resolve wavered as he gazed at her, the connection between them undeniable. Slowly he nodded. "It does, and maybe it's time to stop fighting it." Over the next few days, the tension between them only deepened. Every stolen glance, every fleeting touch, felt charged with the weight of their shared secret. They fell into a rhythm, though it was anything but normal. Moments of passion gave way to quiet conversations about what their relationship could mean, both unwilling to fully define it but unable to deny its importance. Mia had become a part of his every thought. her presence like a gravitational force he couldn't escape. And Nathan wasn't sure he wanted to. One evening, as they sat together on the couch, Mia broke the comfortable silence. "What happens next?" Nathan hesitated, his gaze fixed on the flickering light of the television. "I don't know, but I know I can't stay away from you." She smiled softly, her fingers brushing against his. "Good, because I don't think I could handle that." The simplicity of her response warmed him, easing some of the uncertainty that had been weighing him down. For now, it was enough to know that they were on the same page, even if the future remained unclear. Nathan leaned closer, his fingers intertwining with Mia's as the gravity of their situation settled over them. Her presence grounded him, even as everything else in his life seemed to spin out of control. The quiet intimacy they shared in moments like these felt like a refuge, a place where the outside world couldn't touch them. But reality had a way of creeping in. The next morning, Nathan stood in his kitchen, staring into his coffee mug as if the dark liquid held the answers he so desperately needed. He was wrestling with the inevitable question, what now? His thoughts were interrupted by the soft sound of Mia entering the room. "You're quiet," she observed, wrapping her arms around him from behind. Her voice was light, but he could sense the underlying tension. "I'm just trying to figure things out," he admitted, his tone betraying the inner turmoil he felt. She stepped around to face him, her expression gentle but firm. "Nathan, we don't have to have all the answers right now." "I know," he replied, his voice low, "but I can't shake the feeling that we're walking a tightrope, and I don't want to lose my balance and ruin everything. For you, for us." Her hands found his, and she squeezed them reassuringly. "You won't. We won't. But we have to be honest with ourselves about what this is and what we want." He met her gaze, searching her eyes for a sign of doubt, but finding none. "I want you, Mia. That's the only thing I'm sure of right now." Her smile was soft but filled with emotion. "Then let's take it one step at a time." Their secret was a fragile thing, yet it burned with a quiet intensity that neither could ignore. Every interaction outside the privacy of their moments together felt like a risk, a test of their ability to keep their emotions in check. Yet, somehow, it only made the time they spent alone even more precious. One night, after a particularly long day, Nathan found himself knocking on Mia's door. When she opened it, her surprise quickly turned to concern. "What's wrong?" she asked, stepping aside to let him in. "I just needed to see you," he confessed, his voice tinged with vulnerability. "Everything feels so overwhelming, but being here with you, it makes it bearable." She reached out, cupping his face in her hands. "You don't have to explain, Nathan. I'm here." The simplicity of her words was enough to unravel him. He pulled her into his arms, their connection deepened by the quiet understanding that passed between them. As the weeks passed, their relationship became an intricate dance of stolen moments and whispered confessions. Nathan found himself looking forward to their time together, each encounter a reminder of the passion and connection they shared. But the pressure of keeping their secret weighed heavily on him, and he knew they couldn't stay hidden forever. One evening, as they lay tangled in each other's arms, Nathan broke the silence. "Mia, we can't keep living like this, sneaking around, hiding how we feel. It's not fair to either of us." She sighed, her fingers tracing patterns on his chest. "I know, but what's the alternative? Coming clean could change everything, for us, for everyone around us." "I don't have the answers," he admitted, his voice laced with frustration. "But I know I don't want to lose you, and I'm willing to face whatever comes our way if it means we can be together." Her gaze softened, and she leaned in to kiss him, her lips lingering on his. "Then we'll figure it out. Together." The road ahead was uncertain, fraught with challenges they couldn't yet foresee. But in that moment, as Nathan held Mia close, he felt a glimmer of hope. Whatever lay ahead, they would face it hand in hand. Their connection strong enough to weather any storm. Their story wasn't over. It was just beginning.